Hi everybody, I'm Jeffrey. I work for Latour et Petit real estate agency in Brussels. I work there as a real estate agent, of course. And today we will talk about differences between short-term lease, long-term lease, what are the consequences about that, and especially since 2019. We will talk a bit about the deposit you will have to constitute, also about the inventory and responsibilities you have as a tenant and as a landlord before and during the lease, and also a small chat about the registration of the lease. So let's start with the two major leases in Belgium, the short-term lease and the long-term lease. Short-term lease is within between 6 months and 3 years lease. Long-term lease is 3 years and more. We have in Belgium 3 regions: Flemish region, Walloons region, and the Brussels region, which makes things easier because every region has its own rules, of course. So let's start with the short-term lease. It's a contract between 6 months and 3 years. Okay, so you will live in the house or in the apartment during the duration of the lease. There are some rules if you want to break up the lease earlier than the official period you signed. So no matter when you leave, you will always have to give 3 months notice to your landlord before leaving the apartment or the house. And depending on when you leave, you will have penalties to pay. So in a short-term lease, in Brussels or in Walloon region, you will have to pay 1 month's penalty no matter when you leave the apartment or the house. In the Flemish region, it's depending on when you leave. So if you leave within the first year, you will have 1 month and a half penalty to pay. If you leave between the first year and the second year of the lease, you will have 1 month's penalty to pay. And if you leave between the second and the third year, you will have a half month's penalty to pay. So that's the difference between regions. If you leave at the end of the lease or later, no matter in which region you are, you will not have any penalty to pay. Important to know, if you leave at the end, the official end of the contract, you still have to give your notice to the landlord. Otherwise, the contract will be automatically extended. That's important to know. In the long-term lease, there is no changes since 2019. So no matter in which region you are, if you leave between the first day and the first year, you will have 3 months notice, 3 months penalty to pay. If you leave between the first year and the second year, you will have 2 months penalty to pay, still 3 months notice to give. And if you leave between the second and the third year, you will have 1 month's penalty to pay. If you leave at the end of the lease or later, you will have any penalty to pay. Okay, you will not have any penalty to pay. That's it. That's the big differences for short-term lease, long-term lease, and in function of in which region you are renting your good. So when you rent the apartment or the house, you will have to make a deposit. All the landlords ask for that. It's not legal, but in the real life, everybody asks for that, so you will have to do that. Again, Walloon regions and Brussels region are working same style. So depending on how you make the deposit, you will have 2 months or 3 months deposit to give, to pay. So if you give it cash or on a locked account, it will be 2 months deposit. And if you make a bank guarantee, it will be 3 months deposit. In the Flemish region, no matter how you constitute the deposit, it will always be 3 months deposit to pay. So as I said, it's not legal, but everybody do that, so you will probably have to do that too. After signing the lease and before getting in the apartment or the house, you will also have to do an inventory of the flat. That's something that's not legal again, but it's strongly recommended. And it's not legal to take an expert to do that, but again, it's strongly recommended to do it like that. The inventory is something you do to check how nice is the apartment before you move in, if there are any damages that can be written in that inventory. And at the end of the lease, also what are the damages you did during the time you were living there, what's normal use, what is up to you to pay. So that's all the things you will find in the inventory, and the expert is there to help you to make an independent and impartial document in which it will be definitely clear who has to do that, who has to do what, and who will support which damages. The inventory made by an expert is always paid by the landlord for 50% of the bill and by the tenant for 50% of the bill. After that, during the lease, as a tenant, you have a lot of responsibilities, but there is also responsibilities for the landlord too. Basically, I will talk today about the damages and who has to pay what. That's very simple. Building, and so what's concerned the building is for the landlord, what's concerned the day use and the small reparations is for the tenant. However, for big reparations, big damages, the landlord pays for that, but the obligation of the tenant is to tell to the landlord that there is something to do. Otherwise, consequences of that damages can be for the tenant too. And so the last point for today is the registration of the lease. That's something the landlord has to do. The lease can be opposed to third people, and if he does not do that, the big consequence for him is that the tenant can leave the apartment without giving any notice period and without paying any penalty, no matter when he leaves. So that's it for today. I hope it's a bit clearer for you about the leases in Belgium, and see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.